For more on the urgency of this crisis and why refugees are risking everything in such record numbers, I talked with Michel Gabaudan. He's president of Refugees International.
Violence continues unabated, killings continue unabated, and people keep on fleeing Syria. When the countries that received refugees, like Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, which were very generous at the beginning, are now bursting at the seams.
Here's what I don't understand. The conflict in Syria, Michel, is not new. This has been going on for years. The crisis in Egypt, Libya, Syria. What changed since a year ago?
Well, first, the numbers are accumulating in neighboring countries. Neighboring countries are becoming a little bit leery of having accepted so many refugees. Host communities are starting to complain that refugees are putting a lot of pressure on services, on amenities in the countries. Life is becoming more expensive for the nationals of the countries, and therefore refugees see no much option to stay there.
Over 2,000 have died trying to make this dangerous journey across the Mediterranean. When you talk to them, do they understand the magnitude, the risk involved here, and how dangerous this trip could be?
They do. You know, we were in Egypt last year when the movement was still mostly through Libya and towards Italy. That was before the Greece movements. And we talked to many Syrians there. We told them, you know, that the trip is very dangerous. You have chances to drown. You have chances for your women or your girls to be abused. And even if you make it to Europe, you are very unlikely to be welcome. And their answer was to say, we know, but we've got nothing else to lose. That's the last resource we have.
Do you think to some extent people in general have become desensitized to the conflict in Syria and to the sea of humanity that we've seen come from Europe? And now also, you know, this is not just Europe. You also have a migrant crisis going on in Asia.
It's very easy when there's a problem seems so unmanageable just to ignore it and then say we put the fence, we put the police, we put the army, and we ignore it. And we won't ignore it. If we ignore it, it's going to destabilize further the countries from where they come. It's going to make the world a much more complicated place.
Explain to our viewers perhaps the difference between a refugee and an asylum seeker. What is the difference here?
Well, in principle, there is none. Someone is a refugee because it cannot stay in its country because of a well-founded fear of persecution for political, religious, or there are a series of criteria that are applied. Now, when they come into a foreign country, they are asylum seekers. They apply for asylum, and they go through a process that will recognize that they are indeed refugees and then grant them the status. Now, some people try to use that mechanism to bypass controls to immigration. And this is where I say those who do not require protection will be weeded out through the process and can be sent back. But this process has to be run by people who are trained to interview asylum seekers, who are trained into what are the conditions in the countries where they come from.
In a year from now, will we be still talking about this crisis?
I don't think a solution will have been brought to many of those who are currently seeking this protection. And I don't know what will happen with the movement. You know, people may still start moving. And all the calls to, you know, block the ports or to just to control the smugglers will not do the trick. We have to address the root causes.
We'll leave it at that. Michel Gabaudan, thank you so much for your time.